Hello everyone, Nubkeks here, and welcome to my tier list for the Valeera Patch here in the middle of Season 3 of Hero League for Heroes of the Storm. This will of course also apply to Unranked and Quick Match a little bit, but mostly Hero League. That is our main aim and goal. Using tweak my software, and as I was saying this up, I realised my head here, very strategically placed. Whoops, sorry about that everyone. But let's flip over to the Valeera capture. Let's flip over to here. We're not looking at specialists first. Let's dive into warrior. So, of course, just to lay down a few ground rules as we go into the tier list, it's meant to be a general guide, not a super strict set of rules. It is mostly focused as well for higher level play. So as you go down to the lower leagues, things will get a bit more open. You know, you have other strategies that work in lower levels that don't work in higher levels, or that work in higher that don't work in lower. So won't translate perfectly there. Generally speaking, heroes that are a bit harder to play will fall off, and heroes that are easier will get a bit more common. But, you know, you guys will be able to work it out, I think. We will go through, of course, as usual, every single role, tier for every single role, and explain what those mean. Okay, anyway, I'll also fill you in on kind of like the rough place of the roles in the meta and what the meta is. So let's dive into the warriors. Now, warriors are, at the moment, I feel very dominant and very powerful. Warriors are in a really, really good spot right now. There's a lot of very good warriors, and it was actually something of a struggle to sort them all into tiers because so many are viable. So I would say that with warriors in particular, these tiers, I'd say tier S, 1 and 2, are all quite good. Tier 3 is where they fall off a little bit. But anyway, diving into tier S, these are, I think, the four sort of dominant warriors at the moment that really define and shape the draft. When these guys pop up, or gals pop up, they really, they mix things up. It really makes you stop and go like, okay, whoa, okay, they picked ETC. All right, I'm going to pick some of these heroes to counter what he's going to do, or I need to work around him, or they're going to be picking X, Y, or Z to work with them. They have a huge impact on the draft. Artanis, Diablo, ETC, and Zarya. They all do different things, you know. ETC or Diablo, kind of the traditional main tanks, bringing a lot of control and tankiness, and stuns and CC, all that sort of thing. And we've got Artanis, much more of this bruiser, focusing a lot, especially on these sort of the god flips, as they're called. You know, getting these long range flips, get people back, get them picked off, and just pick up these kills for your team, as well as being this tanky and fairly decent damage dealer at your front lines. And then Zarya, who's drafted more as a damage dealer, really. That brings that sort of extra level of support, a bit of extra level of tankiness as well. Kind of a funny one, Zarya, but very, very strong and dominant. Yeah, I think these are the four warriors that, for me, stand out as being like the fairly dominant warriors. And we go into tier 1, and these, there's actually, I'll put a lot of warriors into tier 1, and these are also, in my opinion, very, very strong as well. Here we go. As I said, there's a lot of them. We've got Dahaka, Rexxar has just been reworked. I'll come back to him in a second. Tyrael, Anubarak, Jen, Varian, and Muradin. So I think all of these warriors are very strong. I don't think you'll be fighting over these quite as much as you will over the tier S guys, but there's still, some of these could be pretty contested, especially once you start building drafts around them or playing on maps that really favor them. Anyway, to just go through them one by one a little bit, Dahaka, I almost put Dahaka in tier S. He was tier S last time. I swapped him with the ETC. You know, top of tier 1 is fairly interchangeable with tier S. Honestly, for the warriors, it's pretty close. Dahaka is really good. Global presence, great wave clear, very tanky, does a lot of damage. He does a lot of things really well. Dahaka he's up there as being very powerful. The Rexxar rework has come through. They haven't really changed Rexxar that much, I don't think. Yeah, I don't see it significantly impacting his strength either way. I think they just added maybe a bit more versatility and stuff like that. We'll keep an eye on how Rexxar does this patch, but I expect him to be just as strong in Hero League. Oh, also worth mentioning as well at this stage that you guys are probably, some of you at least, watching the HGC, which is pro play at the moment. Worth noting that the HGC is a really good place to learn about kind of top level play, but do bear in mind that it is somewhat different from Hero League. Hero League is more unorganized. You've got a lot less organization, less teamwork, much more varied skill levels from game to game. So heroes that are good in Hero League will vary a little bit from heroes that are good at HGC. It's not a direct correlation, so do bear that in mind. I've Tyrael up here as well. Tyrael is just fantastic. A great like dive hero, anti-dive, sanctification, so powerful, very tanky. Could solo as well. Lane's fairly okay-ish. He's a great hero overall. Definitely one of the warriors to watch out for. Next up, we've got. I'd almost considered splitting this tier right here, but I decided against it in the end. We might consider that in the future. But then we've got these 4 heroes, who I consider slightly separate from these 3. We've got a Nubkeks, Chen, Varian, tank Varian that is, and Muradin, of course, tank Varian. But yeah, a Nubkeks, obviously this is very much a counter pick hero. You're going to pick him against mage and ability power heavy teams. Alright? You're not going to pick him early in the draft, because then they're not going to pick mages if they're smart. But yeah, you're going to pick him later in the draft, as your main warrior or a second warrior, when they have a whole ton of ability damage, because that spell armor he gets, that dampened magic talent he gets, you'll become massively tanky, a massive hindrance, and your beetles, you're a real pain in the ass for a hero like Li Ming. So he's very, very good hero to pick up to answer something like that. Next we got Chen, very strong solo laner, very strong dive during team fights as well. That's basically what he does. He solos the lane and he dives backlines during team fights and kind of isolates and gets them killed. And he does both those things very, very well. He's definitely underrated, I think. An uncommon hero to see, but a very powerful one nonetheless. Then we've got Varian next. Tank Varian has received a buff with the overpowered talent at level 1 becoming more powerful. I've actually come around a lot as well to Varian as a tank being very strong for that huge single target pick potential. You charge in, then the taunt, you lock them down, burst them down a little bit, and then your teammates follow up on that point and click single target lockdown and they blow someone up. It can be just massively effective. Absolutely massively effective. I think Varian, especially with the buffs they've given him, is one to watch in this particular patch. I'll be interested to see how he does. But yeah, I'm actually pretty open-minded in terms of Varian as that sort of main tank, that main lockdown right now. Especially good in double warrior comps as well, or even more chain CC and stuff like that. And finally we've got Muradin here. Muradin, oh man, he is probably the most overrated warrior in the game. He's very good, but people think he's much better than he is, and because of that he just languishes with his terrible win rate all the time. I do think though that he is tier 1. I put him at the bottom of tier 1 quite consciously. I even considered moving him on Varian really to tier 2 actually. I did consider that very much so. I decided against it at the very end, purely to kind of make people less mad. People get mad when you question what they think is true, and very much a thing about Muradin is people think he's really good and he's the best tank in the game. He's not the best tank in the game by any means. These 4 unquestionably in my mind, especially let's say the main tanks, Diablo or ETC, are just better for Hero League, just straight up better I think. Muradin is still very good though. He's still a solid hero, multiple strengths, but yeah, he's very overrated, so do bear that in mind. We got tier 2. The tier 2 warriors are still really good. Okay, they're not. It looks like, visually they're kind of low down the tier list because it's just the way I've structured it, but that's not saying they're bad. I actually consider the tier 2 warriors to be very, very good, and here we go. I've only got 3 of them in here. Again, I was thinking of moving these guys down. But Arthas, Johanna, and Leoric, I haven't actually put these in any particular order. I think they're all actually good in their particular niches and what they do well. But I would certainly not be... I would never, first pick any of these heroes, I don't think. Very, very rare occasions would I do that. But if it went deeper into the draft and then suddenly I said, oh yeah, well they've picked a whole bunch of heroes that Arthas is good against, I would start moving towards the Arthas, or if these heroes were banned out. So generally speaking, tier 2, they're very good. There's nothing wrong with these heroes for the warriors, but they just don't jump out. They're not as powerful as the other ones in tier 1 or tier S, but they're still solid choices that you won't go wrong with. Let's put it that way. Then finally we've got tier 3. And these are the warriors that I think are substantially weaker, actually, and I would really avoid taking them if possible. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you do. We've got Stitches, Sonya, and then Cho. So obviously, Cho'Gall can be countered very easily, so it's a risky thing to do. Sonya, she's basically a melee assassin, and she's just a lot weaker than the other melee assassins at the moment. Sonya's just in a really rough spot right now. She's not good. And then Stitches is okay-ish, but at the moment it's like, why would you take Stitches when you can take Artanis, where the Artanis flips are basically as good as the Stitches hook, but then the hero is just better at everything else. So yeah, I would definitely steer away from tier 3. I think it's perfectly fine to pick tier 2. then tier 1 and tier S are great, and you're going to be fighting over those guys most often. Alrighty, let's move on to the supports. I've actually switched up the order this time around in terms of the tier list, because Assassin and Warrior are the most dense roles, so I decided to put the support and specialists, kind of space the two dense roles out with the smaller roles on either side, just to make this a bit more palatable maybe. And I'll talk about the assassin role when I get there. I'm thinking of putting in a couple of changes for that as well, moving forwards. But anyway, here we have the supports. Yeah, for supports, again, small hero pool. I've got a pretty good idea of how this breaks down, I think. So let's dive into it. For tier S, Rhaegar and Malfurion. I think these are still the two best supports in the game. Not by a huge margin, but by a margin for sure. I think they do stand out as being better. I think Rhaegar is actually still better than Malfurion. However, I think part of the thing holding Rhaegar back, that I've seen anyway, a lot, is people choosing the wrong heroic. You know, they choose Bloodlust when they should choose Ancestral, or choose Ancestral when they should choose Bloodlust. That's a bit of a problem with Rhaegar, whereas Malfurion has got terrible talents, and he's pretty much cookie cutter at this point. Rhaegar has more variety, and I feel like people still haven't quite worked out how to do that well. I think when they do, Rhaegar is a little bit better, but they're both extremely strong. Tier 1 then, these are the supports that you'll probably be going to once these ones are banned out, because it's very possible that one or both will be banned out. Here we go, we've got Karazim, Tyrande, and Brightwing. I think all three of these are very good. Now, Tyrande obviously is run as a second support for the most part, not as your solo healer, because she just doesn't heal that much. You can do it. I say on Battlefield of Eternity you can get away with it. It can be kind of fun, or maybe like Towers of Doom or Cursed Hollow, like something where you can interrupt tributes. It's risky, of course, but it can work in Hero League especially. But yeah, I think Karazim probably stands out to me as being overall like the next best support, and he also works very well in double support compositions. Tyrande, obviously mostly double support, and Brightwing, she brings a global, she brings good consistent healing. I think Brightwing is she's a good option overall. Tier 2 then, this might surprise people. I've actually mixed up tier 2 quite a lot. I've put Oriel and Lieutenant Morales moving up into tier 2. This is reflective for me of the meta at the moment. Which is very, very warrior heavy. I feel that Oriel is suffering a little bit because she does not have access to cleanse. She only has Crystal Aegis. So that's a little bit of a problem for her, because there tends to be quite a lot of CC in the games at the moment with all the warriors that are in there. So I feel like Oriel has taken a step down, but again, tier 2, they're still pretty good. And Lieutenant Morales, I actually feel, is doing pretty decently. I feel like there's not as much dive at the moment as there used to be. So the opportunities for actually getting Morales into your game are a little bit higher. Again, if it's very warrior focused, you have a pretty big beefy front line to zone out for Morales, and she can actually be very strong. I think she's actually very underrated and definitely a hero to watch out for in this particular patch. But yeah, that's tier 2. Might be a bit surprising to some people. Then tier 3, Tastar rework. I put it down here. I'm not sure about this one. We'll have to see where it goes. But my initial impression of the Tastar rework is just simply he has 60% less shields, because the cooldown is 60% longer. That's a big deal. You've got shields far less often. You don't have prescience, and Dimensional Shift is on a longer cooldown, so you're much more vulnerable yourself. In return, your basic attack's slow a little bit. I'm not sure about the Tastar. I feel that he's quite weak, honestly. We'll see how it goes. Maybe he'll do better, but at the moment I'm very, very skeptical about how good he is. Now, part of the reason why I'm so skeptical as well, or unsure here, is that he did receive some buffs between the P2R builds that I got to test, and then the version that was released in the live service, a few little buffs. So we'll see how it goes. He's got more vision with Oracle, but honestly, I think for Hero League, I think more vision does not outweigh just more raw shielding. I think for Hero League setting, that's just more valuable. So I'm kind of expecting him to drop off a bit. I think he's going to be tier 3, but we'll see how things go. Keep an open mind for Tastar, but not expecting him to be particularly dominant. Then we've got Lily and Uther. I think they definitely languish behind the other healers. They just don't bring as much. Lily can be good as a double support, especially as a second support against like a dive-heavy auto-attacky type team, like Illidan's, for example. She's very good against. And Uther can work well with something like a Butcher, but generally speaking, I think these tier 3 guys are a bit weaker. You're mostly going to be fighting over the tier S and tier 1 heroes, and then grabbing the tier 2 heroes when they really fit your composition very well, basically. Alright, hopping over to Assassin, and this is probably the group that's going to cause the most controversy, I think. Also, as we go into Assassin, I want to lay down a couple of things. Well, first of all, actually, just to do more with the tier list itself, I have been considering actually splitting, because you're going to see there's a lot of heroes in Assassins right now. The hero pool's gotten really big. It's a constant thing, you know, if you want to just get people just going nuts on the subreddit or something, the Heroes of Storm subreddit, you start talking about hero roles and how we should change hero roles. And they should say this and this and this. I could not give two shits about that. I think it doesn't really matter. I think, you know, these categorizations are ultimately quite simplistic anyway. That's my opinion. I think it's just stupid, really, to be debating overly much the hero roles. I know people aren't going to like that opinion, but that's what I think. However, with Assassin, I am considering splitting it into two sort of sub-roles, just for the sake of, not because of anything of like how well the categorization reflects them, but just simply because there's so goddamn many heroes in Assassin, it becomes a bit cumbersome to sort through. So I'm thinking for the next tier list to split this into ranged assassins and melee assassins. I think it'll just make it clearer for the tier list. So let me know what you think about that one anyway, and what you think about hero roles. Anyway, going into assassins as well, I also feel with these guys that they are overall probably the most balanced kind of grouping within themselves. As in, you know, I feel like the warriors are much more like, you want to be focusing on the tier S especially, and then tier 1. Same with support. I feel like with assassin though, just by nature, you've got multiple damage slots to fill within your team. You've got a lot of flexibility, and I think the assassins are going to reflect this. You got a lot of flexibility to respond to what your enemy team is doing. It's so important to counterpick what they're doing to fit something that works well with the map and to synergize with your team. So I think with assassins, we're moving a little bit away from power rankings and a bit more into, actually, it's a good state for balance to be in. A bit more of like, okay, you can actually pick a tier 3 assassin quite happily if they actually counterpick what your enemy team is doing really well. Then suddenly tier 3 assassins become really good, which I don't think is as much the case with other roles. I think that's mostly true with assassins. Anyway, let's go into it. Tier S, I've got two heroes. They're actually the same as last time. Ragnaros and Thrall. I think Ragnaros a bit above Thrall actually here, but I feel these are probably the two overall best assassins in the game. Again, they fit once again as this sort of this tanky meta, as they fulfill a sort of a tanky frontline thing. But I mean, Ragnaros, he's just so strong right now. Brings good solo laning, good wave clear, good teamfight damage, pick potential with Sulfuras Smash. He can do objectives well, fairly well for the most part, and then he's got Molten Core for defending or pushing with objectives or stalling them out. He can do just so many things really well. I think he's just the best assassin in the game, kind of hands down actually. And Thrall a bit behind him, but Thrall's still very good. Earthquake, what a great team fighting heroic and a good solo laner as well, and does good damage. But I feel like Ragnaros definitely for me stands out as the best assassin right now. So there you go. Tier 1 then, you'll see this tier is pretty big, but these are, I think overall probably the most powerful assassins overall. And again, like I said, there's going to be a lot of counterpicking stuff going on. We've got Tychus, Jaina, Zul'jin, Zeratul, Kerrigan, Samuro, Kael'thas, moved him up a lot, I should say, Vala, and then Gul'dan. So I think Tychus, obviously, it's a very warrior-heavy meta right now. Tychus is very powerful against warriors, and he's just a great, sturdy assassin all around. So he's very, very strong. Jaina has been just huge win rates for a long time now in Hero League. I'm actually going to try get you guys a game of Jaina pretty soon, because I haven't actually been playing her myself, so I'm not fully on top of the Jaina thing. But the win rates speak for themselves. They're absolutely massive. I think the blow-up potential that she has can just win team fights and win the games. It's absolutely huge blow-up potential. I think that's probably the main thing that swings the win rate so much in her favor. Next up, we've got Zul'jin, whose win rate has been climbing, and yeah, I think he just does a lot of damage. He does a lot of damage. And that's very important as a ranged damage dealer. There's not too much dive to inconvenience him as well. I mean, like, look, if you're fighting over Ragnaros and Thrall, you don't have a lot of dive. That's just the way it is. So I think Zul'jin does thrive in that sort of situation. And yeah, I think as people get a bit of a better control of how to play him, he's been doing quite well. Next up, we've got Zeratul. I've heard, I haven't tested it yet because I'm on EU and we're a day behind, but I've heard that Zeratul's Vorpal Blade has actually been nerfed so it's only a blink range away from a hero. If he plays Air Tool, you know what that is. But that could actually lower him down a bit in the tier list. I'm not sure how much, though. I wasn't expecting that change to happen. So, yeah, I'm still trying to work my way around that one. For the moment, I've left Air Tool here. I think he's very strong. VP, so good. Mobility, burst damage, kill pressure. Air Tool brings a lot of things to the table. He's very strong. Kerrigan, then, kill pressure. Big kill pressure. Good dive and blow up potential. A lot of damage from her, or more so setting up her team for damage, I suppose. But Kerrigan is very good and consistently strong in Hero League. I've moved Samuro up. I think Samuro is excellent on particular maps where he can just kind of do a split pushy Samuro type thing. Just getting loads of merc camps, pushing loads of lanes, just creating loads of map pressure. Almost playing like a specialist, I think, actually, does Samuro. And when he does that well, he can be a really powerful presence in the game. I moved Kael'thas up a lot, actually, in this tier list. I've moved him up a lot, and this is reflective of how the meta has changed, I feel, and how we are focused on these somewhat immobile and tanky heroes at the front with lots of warriors and then Thrall and Ragnaros. I feel like Kael'thas is actually doing very well. Again, there's not a ton of dive, so he is, in a lot of games, actually a very good one to pick up. He brings very strong wave clear. He brings very strong damage to like these sort of melee heavy teams at the front lines. You know, he lands like that big flame strike across these sort of melee stacked teams. He can do tons of damage, and Chain Bomb does tons of damage. And then he's got the stuns coming out and the Phoenix. I think he fits very well actually into the current meta. I think the talent design is dreadful. I don't like the hero much. I used to love him. I don't like him much now myself, but I do have to say that, you know, he has, I think with the way the meta is going, Kael'thas is actually quite a relevant hero pick these days, especially on maps like, I think it's a bit overrated on Infernal Shrine, so I think maybe like something like Dragonshire or Tombless Spider Queen, where, you know, he can be fairly safe stacking up his quest, and just all the damage he throws out really adds up, and the wave clear. Yeah, I think he's very good there. Then we've got Vala. I'm curious as to how Vala's going to do. Vala obviously combos insanely well with Tassadar, but Tassadar's been nerfed, so I think that hurts Vala a little bit. Nonetheless, though, she's very mobile, very high damage output hero. I think she is very good overall. I think she's I do think maybe bottom of tier 1 is a good spot for her in Hero League. She's a bit more dominant in pro play in the HGC, but for Hero League, that seems pretty decent for me. Then I've got Gul'dan here at the bottom of tier 1. Gul'dan is really good. He brings wave clear. His heroic is amazingly strong. I'm just not convinced that many players are that good at Gul'dan. I would say, for me, actually, the same thing with I'd say playing through, this is just my experience, playing through with sort of Master and sort of Diamond 1, mostly level play. That's what our road to Grandmaster has been for the last while. We've got to Master now, so I have a better idea of Grandmasters coming up shortly. But people are pretty shit at Gul'dan and Tychus, to put it bluntly. They're very popular, and people are pretty shit at them. But when you do get a good Gul'dan, he's very strong. I mean, we've played against Haswabs and Gul'dan, for example. Amazing player and does really good stuff with that hero. I think Gul'dan, he's probably bottom of tier 1. Short range makes it a little bit difficult to play him, but he does a lot of damage, and that heroic can be super impactful. So yeah, there you go. So I've been a tier 2 then. Wasting no time, let's get into it. A very big tier 2. You can see I've put Valeera actually in tier 2. I'm not super sure where she's going to go. And I would say with Valeera, she seems like, to me, a hero that has a bit of a learning curve, a bit of an initial learning curve. So I think you're not going to have to worry about her being at her maximum strength for a few days, as people kind of get a hang of her. But she's very similar to Nova in some ways, that she brings like single target blow up. But Valeera is more like in the backlines and disruptive. You know, with that smoke bomb, she's very disruptive, kind of a warrior-esque type disruption with being in the back lines. But she does a lot of burst damage, and I'll be interested to see where she goes. I think for now, I think tier 2 is probably where she's going to be. Not tier S, I don't think. Maybe tier 1, but tier 2 for now, I think should be a pretty good insight into how good she's going to be, at least at the start of this. Then we've got Lunara, Li Ming, Alarak, Falstad, Illidan, Nova, Butcher, Tracer, and Raynor. As you can see, all pretty good heroes overall. And again, like I said, with Assassins, it's very much about how they fit in your comp and how they counter the enemy and how they fit with the map. We've got actually a lot of good Assassins. I don't think tier 2 are that far behind tier 1 by any means whatsoever. I think these are all great heroes. One actually, to talk about a couple that stand out, I think Falstad and Li Ming, actually very difficult heroes to play, that do much better in pro play than they do in Hero League play. Li Ming because in pro play they've got much better single target focus, so they're much better actually securing kills, and then the Li Ming resets can work, and her poke is very valuable. She's not as valuable in Hero League, where things are a bit more chaotic and the resets aren't as guaranteed. Then Falstad as well, he brings a lot of utility for an assassin but less damage. Again, it works really well in pro play because the utility is so useful, and then he does a lot of single target like burst damage, and they're able to capitalize on that because they got that single target focus. So Falstad does well there, but not as well in Hero League in my opinion. And then yeah, the other heroes, they're all very good overall, but none of them stand out. Yeah, I think they're not as dominant as these guys, but they're very much not that far behind at all. We've got a pretty good balance with assassins. Tier 3 then, a little bit weaker, but you can still pick these guys up in certain circumstances. We've got Chromie. Chromie, actually, from HGC, we've learned that she's a really good counter to Oriel, because Oriel just can't deal with the poke that Chromie does, because her heroes aren't enraged to do any damage, so she doesn't get any energy to heal anyone, and Chromie's just poking away, doing more damage, and it just adds up and adds up. Chromie can be very good. Varian, he can be good in certain circumstances. I mean, I just, like at high level play, I don't think there's any particular reason to ever run Twin Blades Varian when you can run like an Illidan or something else. I feel like he's just way weaker than other melee assassins. I actually like Colossal Smash a lot. But honestly, I feel like if you're playing Varian, you probably want to be playing Tank Varian right now. He seems by far the best one. But you can potentially pick up a Tank Varian early in the draft and then swap over to a Damage Varian later on, and it could work out fairly okay. But generally speaking, the Assassin Varian, not that good. Then we've got Greymane as well. I feel just a bit weaker than the other assassins we have in the game right now. There's not that much reason to pick the guy. He could work well with like a Tyrael composition, sure, but generally speaking, no. And then Gaul just sucks in my opinion. You know, it's gonna choke Gaul as a combo. They can be okay, but generally speaking, no, probably not. And there you go, guys. That's the assassins. Let's dive into the specialists. Alright, so with specialists, in fact, boom, tier S is empty. I've not put anything in tier S. Specialists, they're okay right now. I feel like with it's just not a super great time to be a specialist. They can be quite decent, but they're not as dominant as other heroes. I don't feel like any of them warrant being tier S. You know, you're not going to be fighting over a specialist the same way you're going to be fighting over like Artanis or ETC or Diablo. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be fighting over them as much as you will over Rhaegar or Malfurion, or over, you know, Thrall or Ragnaros especially. You know, specialists, they're good, but they're not the heroes that you're fighting over at the start of the draft. So I don't think any of them deserve to be tier S. Let's go into tier 1 though. So here we go, tier 1. We got Nazeebo, the Lost Vikings, Zul, and Sergeant Hammer. I think fairly straightforward here, honestly. Nazeebo just does a lot of sustained damage. He tends to do much better on maps that go long. He definitely spikes in power much more towards the end of the game. Like level 20 is a huge power spike for him. So he does work pretty well in Hero League and games that tend to go long. You know, the Lost Vikings, great in like Garden of Terror. Infernal Shrines, maybe Blackheart's Bay, stuff like that. Dragonshire, potentially, maybe. They're good on particular maps, and we're Lost Vikings players. So, yeah, Garden of Terror for the most part. Then we got Zul, great wave clear. Bit weak in team fights, though, not much damage. But, you know, he brings good control and map control and pushing and stuff, which is pretty damn good on a map like Dragonshire. Then we got Sergeant Hammer, a good range damage dealer. You know, if they don't have anything to deal with Hammer, she can be quite a pain. I think Hammer is good overall. And tier 2 for the specialists. I feel like specialists in general are. I don't feel like specialist tiers are quite equivalent to other tiers. Like I feel like tier 2 of specialists, they're a little bit below maybe tier 2 of warriors and stuff like that. I don't know, kind of equal. Anyway, we've got Sylvanas, Zagara, and Abathur up here. That's what I've actually mixed up the specialist tiers quite a lot in this patch. Kind of reflective of how I feel they fit in the current game. So Sylvanas obviously brings amazing pushing power, great wave clear, and Wailing Arrow is a big team fight thing. So she's good in that sense, but I think she's actually, I would point her out as a specialist that's very much overrated. She's very good. When she wins, she can win dramatically. But she's not like tier S or tier 1, I don't think. I think very much tier 2. Put Zagara up in tier 2. Her win rate's climbed a lot. I haven't been playing her myself, but it's worth noting that Zagara is doing pretty well at the moment. I guess she does pretty well in the warrior heavy meta, where her summons can just output a lot of damage, and her Qs can output a lot of damage, and maybe people are clumped up from the Maw, Devouring Maw, stuff like that. So keep an eye on Zagara. She could be a hero coming back into the meta after being out of it for a long time. Then we got Abathur over here. Great all-around hero. He's good. You definitely want to fit him into an Abathur composition, but if you're an Abathur player, hopefully you know what that is. But yeah, I think bottom of tier 2 kind of describes him pretty well. Then we've got tier 3. We've got Medivh, Gazlo, Asmodan, and Murky. I have moved these guys down. I think, Medivh, in the hands of a very good Medivh player, can be absolutely beastly. Very skill-dependent hero. Overall, though, not a hero you need to worry about too much. Then same with these guys. They do like their split pushy specialist thing well, but in general, it's not going to be that impactful. Certain maps, yeah, they can be quite good, but generally nothing too much to worry about. And yeah, I think there you go, guys. That is like the tier list. Just show you the roles once again. We've got the Warriors. Warriors very strong right now. A lot of very solid options in the Warriors. Hard to go wrong with these guys. It's a good time to be a Warrior player. Supports. Mixed up the tier list quite a bit, thinking that the Tastar rework's probably going to be pretty weak actually overall. Oh yeah, the Rexar rework. Rexar rework seems to not have changed him much at all. Tastar seems to have made him weaker, I think. We'll see. Anyway, yeah. Supports haven't changed overly much, but I think ones to watch. I think Morales maybe coming in a little bit when you do have these sort of, just big, beefy, teams just clashing against each other and butting heads and being not too dive oriented really. I think Morales can do quite well there, and then the lane dominance that she brings, stuff like that. I think she is one to watch. On say like on Braxis and on Battlefield of Eternity particularly, she's very good on those maps. Then we got the assassins. Again, thinking of splitting this into melee and ranged, because my god, what? There's just so many assassins in the game now. There's just a lot. This is a big list to try to parse through. Anyway, I think Ragnaros stands out for me as being the best. I decided to leave Thrall in tier S rather than tier 1, more so for the sake of just having things be a little bit more readable, honestly. But yeah, assassins, you actually have a lot of flexibility here to pick up even, the bottom of tier 2 or tier 3 assassins if they fit your draft very well. I feel like they're a pretty good balanced spot overall, in terms of just fitting the draft more so than being a strict power rankings. And then we've got the specialists. Overall a fairly weak role, I think, at the moment, but they can still work pretty well, bring you good lane control. They tend to scale well into the late game as well, I suppose. A lot of them like Hammer and Nazebo, the Vikings. But yeah, specialists are in a weird spot. You're not going to be fighting over them as much, but they can still be fairly okay. Guys, that is the tier list. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Valeera patch. Thank you very much for watching. I am about to hop on a live stream very shortly, so if you're watching this tier list live, do come check that out. Thank you for watching as well. Stay tuned. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe. I've got lots of other tips and guides, lots of Hero League gameplay. We're at Master League now, going forward, so you can pick up a lot of kind of this sort of advice and insight put into effect or being analyzed kind of live and on the fly, which is hopefully a pretty helpful thing for you guys to improve, and a bit of fun as well to dive into those games. So yeah, I'm gonna leave you. I love you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye. I don't have an outro screen built into this this software, so we're just gonna sit here for a second to make sure I don't cut myself off at the end. Click on one of these things to watch one of my other videos or check out the channel.